Have you ever felt it? That moment when people stop clapping for you, when the same ones who once loved you now whisper behind your back, when friends become strangers and you wonder, what did I do wrong? But here's what Carl Jung discovered, and it will change everything you think you know about human relationships. Jung said, what you resist persists. What if your light simply became too bright for their shadows? What if the reason people turn against you has nothing to do with you at all? Stay with me because in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you the hidden psychology behind why good people get abandoned, why growth feels like punishment, and why the most painful betrayals come from those we love most. This isn't just theory. This is the roadmap to understanding the loneliest journey every evolving person must face and how to navigate it without losing your soul. Picture this moment. You wake up one morning and suddenly realize that your closest friend, the person who knew all your secrets, who celebrated your victories, who held you through your darkest nights, doesn't trust you anymore. The signs were subtle at first. Text messages that took hours to get a response when they used to reply instantly. Plans that got canceled with excuses that felt hollow. Conversations that used to flow for hours, now ending in awkward silences. And that smile, oh that smile. It's still there when they see you, but it's different now. It's the smile you give to acquaintances. Polite, distant, protective. You replay every interaction in your mind, searching for the moment it all went wrong. But there wasn't a fight, no dramatic confrontation, no harsh words exchanged. It was worse than that. It was nothing. They just drifted away. Like you suddenly became a stranger in your own relationships. And the most painful part? You don't understand why. You know something has changed, but nobody will tell you what. You're left to wonder if you're imagining it all, or if you've somehow become the villain in a story you don't even understand. This is the silent suffering of the person who grows. The invisible wound that cuts deeper than any argument ever could. Because when someone stops loving you with words, at least you know where you stand. But when they stop loving you with their energy, when they withdraw their presence like they're protecting themselves from you, that's when you know you've crossed into territory that terrifies them. So you start the investigation. You become a detective of your own behavior, analyzing every word you spoke, every decision you made, every boundary you set. Maybe I was too honest. Maybe I shouldn't have shared my success. Maybe I pushed them too hard to grow. Maybe I became too confident. You start editing yourself, dimming your light, speaking less, sharing less, achieving less. You think, if I just go back to who I was before, maybe they'll love me again. So you try to shrink back into the person they're comfortable with. You apologize for things you didn't do wrong. You downplay your achievements. You hide your growth. But here's the cruel irony. The more you dim yourself to make them comfortable, the further they pull away. Because now they don't just see your light as threatening, they see your desperate attempts to hide it as fake. You can't win. And this is where most people break. They conclude that there's something fundamentally wrong with them. That they're too much or not enough or just broken. But Carl Jung understood something different. He said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. What if the problem isn't that you've become difficult to love? What if the problem is that you've become difficult to control? What if your growth isn't the betrayal? What if their reaction isn't your burden? This is where we need to go deeper, into the shadow. Carl Jung spent his life studying the human psyche, and he discovered something that explains everything you're experiencing. He called it the shadow. Every person has a shadow. It's the part of themselves they've rejected, denied, or buried. It's not evil, it's just the aspects of their potential that they've decided are too risky, too vulnerable, or too difficult to embrace. Maybe they buried their ambition because they were taught it was selfish. Maybe they buried their authenticity because they were punished for being different. Maybe they buried their power because they were told it was dangerous. For years, this worked. They built a life around who they thought they should be instead of who they actually were. And then you started growing. You started embracing the parts of yourself you used to hide. You started setting boundaries. You started pursuing your dreams. You started speaking your truth. And without realizing it, you became a living mirror. When they look at you now, they don't just see you. They see the version of themselves they could have been if they had been brave enough. They see their own buried potential staring back at them. And it hurts. Jung said, the meeting with oneself is, at first, the meeting with one's own shadow. But most people aren't ready for that meeting. So instead of looking inward, they look at you with resentment. They don't hate you. They hate what you represent. You've become the embodiment of their unlived life, and that's the most painful mirror anyone can face. This is why your growth feels like a personal attack to them. Because in some unconscious way it is. Not because you're attacking them, but because your very existence is confronting them with their own limitations. Now here's where it gets really interesting and really painful. Jung discovered that when people can't face their own shadow, they project it onto others. Projection means taking your internal conflict and making it someone else's fault. So when your friend sees you setting boundaries, their unconscious mind says they think they're better than everyone. When they see you pursuing your dreams, their unconscious mind says they're being selfish. When they see you growing confident, their unconscious mind says they've changed and not in a good way. But here's what's really happening. They're not describing you. They're describing their own internal conflict. The part of them that wants to set boundaries but is afraid of being called selfish. The part of them that wants to pursue their dreams but is afraid of being called unrealistic. The part of them that wants to be confident but is afraid of being called arrogant. So they take all of that fear, all of that self-doubt, all of that internal criticism, and they put it on you. Suddenly you become the repository for everything they can't accept about themselves. You become the villain in their story, not because of what you've done, but because of what you represent. And the cruelest part? The closer they were to you, the more this hurts them. Because you used to be their safe person. The one who made them feel okay about staying small. The one who joined them in their complaints about life instead of actually changing it. You were their co-conspirator in mediocrity. And now you've broken the pact. Jung had a word for what you're going through. He called it individuation. It's the process of becoming who you actually are instead of who everyone else needs you to be. It sounds beautiful in theory. In practice, it's terrifying. Because individuation means you stop trying to please everyone. You stop editing yourself to fit into other people's comfort zones. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You start setting boundaries even when it disappoints people. You start saying no. Even when it makes you the bad guy. You start choosing yourself even when it feels selfish. And this is where the loneliness begins. Because when you stop being who everyone else needs you to be, you discover who actually loves you for who you are. And sometimes that list is much shorter than you expected. Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But he never said it would be easy. He never said it wouldn't cost you relationships. He never said people would celebrate your growth. Because here's the truth about individuation. It's not just about becoming yourself. It's about becoming yourself while everyone around you stays the same. And that makes you a threat. Not because you're trying to hurt anyone, but because your very existence challenges their decision to stay stuck. Let me paint you a picture of what's happening in their mind when you start changing. Imagine you and your friend have been walking the same path for years. Complaining about the same problems. Dreaming about the same changes. Talking about someday when you'll both finally take action. It was comfortable. You were both stuck, but you were stuck together. And then one day you actually start walking. At first, they cheer you on. Good for you, they say. I'm so proud of you. But as you keep walking, as you get further ahead, something shifts. They start noticing the distance between you. They start feeling left behind. And instead of walking faster to catch up, they start hoping you'll slow down. They don't say this out loud, of course. Maybe they don't even consciously think it. But unconsciously, your progress has become their pain. Because every step you take forward is a reminder of the steps they haven't taken. Every goal you achieve is a mirror showing them the goals they've abandoned. Every boundary you set is a spotlight on the boundaries they're afraid to set. So they start the subtle sabotage. You've changed, they say, and they don't mean it as a compliment. You think you're better than us now, they whisper, hoping to shame you back into smallness. Remember when you used to be fun, they ask, trying to guilt you into abandoning your growth. And here's the most painful part. They genuinely believe they're trying to help you. In their mind, they're saving you from becoming someone they can't recognize. They're protecting you from losing yourself. But what they're really doing is protecting themselves from feeling left behind. They'd rather pull you back down than do the work to rise up. Here's something that will shock you. The people who fight your growth the hardest are often the ones who claim to love you the most. Your family, your oldest friends, your romantic partner. Why? Because they have the most invested in the old version of you. They built their relationship with you based on who you used to be. They learned how to love the limited version of you, the version that needed them, the version that wouldn't outgrow them. And now you're changing the rules of the relationship without asking their permission. You're becoming someone they don't know how to love or control. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes what we call love is actually control. They loved that you always came to them for advice because it made them feel needed. They loved that you shared their struggles because it made them feel less alone. They loved that you stayed at their level because it made them feel secure. But now you're setting boundaries. Now you're making your own decisions. Now you're solving your own problems. And they're discovering that their love was conditional. Conditional on you staying the same. Conditional on you needing them. Conditional on you not threatening their worldview. Jung said, the greatest tragedy of the family is not the lack of love but the substitution of love for control. This is why your growth feels like betrayal to them. Because in their mind, if you really loved them, you wouldn't change in ways that make them uncomfortable. If you really cared, you would stay small to make them feel big. If you were really loyal, you would choose their comfort over your growth. But you know what? That's not love. That's codependency. And your refusal to participate in it anymore is the healthiest thing you could do for everyone involved. Even if they can't see it yet, here's the thing that will set you free. You are not responsible for how other people react to your growth. You're not changing them. You're not doing anything to them. You're simply being yourself. And their reaction is about them. Jung explained this beautifully. He said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. When someone reacts strongly to your success, they're revealing their relationship with their own potential. When someone gets angry at your boundaries, they're revealing their discomfort with their own lack of boundaries. When someone calls you selfish for prioritizing your dreams, they're revealing their own guilt about abandoning theirs. You are not the problem. You are the mirror. And mirrors don't apologize for what they reflect. They just reflect. This is why trying to manage their reaction is exhausting and futile. You can't control what they see when they look at you because what they see is filtered through their own unhealed wounds, their own unlived dreams, their own unprocessed fears. The same growth that threatens one person will inspire another. The same boundaries that offend one person will be respected by another. The same success that triggers one person will be celebrated by another. It's not about you. It's about them. And once you understand this, you can stop taking their reaction personally. You can stop trying to shrink yourself to make them comfortable. You can stop apologizing for being who you are. Because their discomfort is not your emergency. Their growth is not your responsibility. Their healing is not your job. Your only job is to keep walking your path, even if you have to walk it alone. So how do you do it? How do you keep growing when growth costs you relationships? How do you stay open when people keep closing their doors? How do you maintain your heart when the world feels like it's turning against you? First, stop trying to convince them. Stop trying to prove that you haven't changed in the ways they think you have. Stop trying to win back people who have already decided to misunderstand you. Your energy is precious. Don't waste it on people who are determined to see you as the villain in their story. Second, trust the process. Jung called this the dark night of the soul. It's a necessary part of individuation. You have to lose who you were to become who you're meant to be. And that process requires space. Space from people who knew the old you. Space from relationships that were built on your limitations. Space from environments that required your smallness. This space isn't punishment, it's preparation. Third, find your tribe. The people who celebrate your growth instead of fearing it. The people who challenge you to be better instead of guilting you for changing. The people who love the version of you that you're becoming, not just the version they remember. These people exist. But you have to create space for them by releasing the people who don't. Fourth, practice radical self-compassion. This journey is hard enough without you joining the chorus of people criticizing yourself. You're not wrong for growing. You're not bad for changing. You're not selfish for prioritizing your well-being. You're not arrogant for knowing your worth. You're not difficult for having boundaries. You're becoming yourself. And that is the bravest thing anyone can do. Here's what nobody tells you about the journey of individuation. The loneliness isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's not punishment for growing, it's preparation for who you're becoming. In the silence, you finally hear your own voice. In the solitude, you finally meet yourself. In the space, you finally have room to breathe. For so long, you've been surrounded by voices telling you who to be, how to act, what to want, how to feel. Family voices. Friend voices. Society voices. Media voices. So many voices that you forgot the sound of your own. But in the loneliness of growth, all those voices fade away. And finally, you can hear yourself think. You can feel what you actually feel instead of what you're supposed to feel. You can want what you actually want instead of what you're supposed to want. You can be who you actually are instead of who you're supposed to be. Jung said, loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. But in sacred solitude, you don't need to communicate these things to anyone else. You can just be with them. You can honor your own thoughts without having to defend them. You can pursue your own dreams without having to justify them. You can love yourself without having to convince anyone else that you're worthy of love. This is the gift that comes wrapped in the painful package of being misunderstood. This is the treasure that's hidden in the lonely journey of growth. This is why Jung called individuation the privilege of a lifetime. Because in losing everyone else, you find yourself. And that self is worth the journey. So here we are at the end of this exploration. And I want to leave you with the truth that will set you free. If people turned against you, maybe it's because you stopped turning against yourself. If people pulled away from you, maybe it's because you stopped pulling away from yourself. If people stopped believing in you, maybe it's because you finally started believing in yourself. You haven't lost their love. You've just outgrown their definition of it. Their version of love required your smallness. Their version of friendship required your stagnation. Their version of loyalty required your limitations. But you've discovered a different version. A version of love that celebrates growth instead of fearing it. A version of friendship that challenges you instead of enabling you. A version of loyalty that honors your journey instead of sabotaging it. And yes, this version is harder to find. Yes, it requires you to walk alone for a while. Yes, it means losing people you thought would be with you forever. But it also means finding people who love all of you, not just the parts that make them comfortable. Building relationships based on who you are, not who you used to be. Creating a life that reflects your values, not their expectations. Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But here's what he didn't say. It's also the most liberating thing. Because when you accept yourself completely, you stop needing everyone else to accept you. When you love yourself unconditionally, you stop settling for conditional love from others. When you believe in yourself fully, you stop begging others to believe in you. And that changes everything. So if you're in that lonely space right now, if you're feeling misunderstood, abandoned, or turned against, know this. You're not broken. You're not wrong. You're not too much or not enough. You're just different now. Different from who you used to be. Different from who they need you to be. Different from who the world expects you to be. And that difference is not a problem to be solved. It's a gift to be celebrated. Because the world doesn't need another person trying to fit in. The world needs you exactly as you are. Growing. Changing. Evolving. Becoming. Even if you have to do it alone. Especially if you have to do it alone. Because that's when you discover you were never alone. You always had yourself. And yourself is enough. That's the real reason people turn against you. Not because you're difficult to love. But because you're no longer difficult to be. And that makes all the difference.